Imagine you're driving a truck late at night, alone on a deserted road. Suddenly, the sky lights up brighter than a day. Next, you meet a strange person in the middle of the road. How would you react? This is a story of a truck driver's encounter with an unknown creature and one of many such stories of late night drivers. Welcome to the dark side of storytelling, where every story is full of thrillers and mysteries. In this channel, I bring you both true and fictional thrilling stories. If you are ready to embrace fear, like this video and share the thrill with others. Like many encounter incidents, this story was self-reported by the person who encountered. This channel cannot validate all the details of the story. With that disclaimer, let's dive into today's story. Today's story is about a truck driver named Dan. Dan was an everyday working truck driver from Colorado. His primary job was to drive his truck with fresh fruits and vegetables from southern American states to northern states. Sometimes, he even started his truck from the border of Mexico. So, one night, he was driving his truck through the empty roads of Oregon. He was near Millersburg on Interstate Highway 5, and there was nothing around for miles, just trees, mountains, and the open road. He had a delivery to make by morning, so he decided to keep driving through the night. It was around 1 a.m., and he hadn't seen another car in hours. Then out of nowhere, and the sky suddenly lit up, bright as day. Startled by it, Dan slammed on the brakes. Everything around him, the trees, the mountains, and the road was glowing in an eerie, steady light. It wasn't lightning, surely. There was no flicker or thunder. For about 10 seconds, the world was completely lit up. Dan got confused and wondered what has happened. One quick note for the context. This story is from the 1970s. It was around the peak of the Cold War period, between the Soviet Union and the USA. At that time, tension between the countries was high. Such high that nuclear war between these countries was considered as a possibility. Hence, people in the USA were constantly taught about nuclear bombs and what to do if that happens. Because of that constant drumbeating from news and government, Dan thought maybe it could be a nuclear bomb dropped in close vicinity and braced himself for an explosion. But nothing happened. There was no sound, no blast, just silence. After waiting a few minutes, Dan convinced himself it must be something else, something like a meteor. So he restarted his truck engine and hit the road again. A few miles down the road, he spotted a car stopped in the middle of the road with its hazard lights flashing. He slowed his truck and looked at the car more closely. He immediately noticed the front of the car was smashed and thought they might have hit an animal. With no way to drive around it and wanting to help fellow travelers in the middle of the night, he parked his truck on the edge of the road. Not only it was middle of night, but it was far from population center. It was his moral duty to help someone in distress in such circumstance. So he got out to check on the driver and ask if he needed any help. As he got closer, he saw a man sitting on the ground next to the car. The man had his head resting on his knees. His body was moving slowly towards the ground and moving back. It was like something kids do when they think they are in trouble and can avoid the whole situation by hiding their face. However, that posture in that situation felt a bit wrong. Something about the situation felt off. Despite that, Dan called out anyway. "Hey, are you okay?" To that, the man groaned. "My head hurts," he said without looking up. "Did you hit a deer?" Dan asked, feeling uneasy. The man's posture and tone were making him nervous. "Can you help me?" the man asked. "I think I hurt my head." Dan took a few steps closer, but something felt wrong and sinister. He looked at the car more closely and realized it didn't look like a real car. It had all the basic parts, wheels, headlights, windows, but nothing extra. There were no brand logos, no license plates, and no trunk. The car looked like a fake, like a cheap toy or a bad imitation. At this point, Dan's instincts and experience with dark nights kicked in. He slowly started backing away from the man and the scene. In some level, he felt bad for leaving the guy there, but everything in him was saying, "Get out of there." As man somehow notices Dan backing away, his voice changed. It became sharper, almost angry. "Please, I have a concussion. I need your help." Dan froze his backward motion as the man lifted his head. His face was wrong. Everything was in the right place, but his eyes and mouth were upside down. At the same time, Dan hears something from side of scene, a soft shuffling sound, like footsteps on wet grass. He thinks there could be more of them hiding on the side of the road. Dan's heart started pounding. He turned quickly and ran back to his truck as fast as he could. He jumped into the cab, locked the door, and started the engine. Just then, he heard a loud bang on the side of his truck. The man, or whatever it was already there. It knocked on the window and smiled. With its upside-down mouth, the smile looked like a scream. "Let me in," it said. The word sounded twisted and wrong. Dan didn't wait. He hit the gas and drove straight into the fake car, pushing it out of the way. The car crumpled like it was made of paper, making no sound. As he was racing from the scene, he saw a couple more similar-looking men on the side of the road. They must have been hidden from sight behind that fake car. He got more scared and hit the gas even harder. Once he was out of the sight, Dan didn't look back. He kept driving, hoping they did not follow him. Even they followed. He prayed they were not faster than his truck. Although he felt slightly confident of losing them after reaching more population centers, he did not stop his truck until he reached his destination in Seattle. It was morning by the time he reached there and felt relieved he came out of the situation with no harm. He decided to stay overnight in Seattle, take a rest, and start the journey next morning. That way, he would pass that area in the daylight on his journey back. Despite his ordeal on the first part of the trip, his return back home was without any incident. He told the story to all his friends. However, he didn't think they believed him. I mean, how can anyone believe such bizarre incident without any evidence? But how was he supposed to take an evidence? It was before smartphones. Heck, I would have focused on running away from whatever it was, rather, even if I had phone on me. Dan, on the other hand, tells it to everyone he meets. So he obviously does believe what he saw. He was sure about the guy being an alien or extraterrestrial. He is still puzzled what was the motive of them to luring him. Did they really need help? What would they have done if he got closer to him? Years later, one of his friends saw about the Thatcher effect in some papers. The Thatcher effect is a phenomenon where it becomes more difficult to detect feature changes in an upside-down face, despite identical changes being obvious in normal face. He showed one of the pictures to Dan, and Dan wouldn't even look at it for more than a second. He said it was exactly what the guy looked like. Wow, that was a thrilling story. Share your thoughts on the story and your theories in the comment section. I will highlight some of the best theories and comments. As Truman says, if I do not see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night.